So, Jared, Eagle Eye 1975, he asked me on a Facebook post what I thought about a certain article. Link in the description box to the article. And before I get to that, I just want to say that Jared recently had a heart attack, and that's why he's got a lot of time to spend on Facebook, just picking people's brains, because, he's not able to work right now. And I'll leave a link in the description box to where you could donate and support him if you chose, but I don't know that a lot of you will, because when he was posting fairly frequently as Eagle Eye 1975, he was of a different political persuasion than a lot of you. And it's not that he wasn't nice at times. He's just of a different political orientation than most of you, and so you're going to hate on him. I'm just going to draw a parallel right here. Recently, there were a lot of people telling me, "You don't know the whole story about Tattoo Skin 72. Shut the fuck up until you know the whole story, until you go down there and hear it from the horse's mouth and interview him yourself and review everything there is to know about it. Then you don't know, and so don't be having an opinion." Same fucking people who say stuff like that were in the same community when Eagle Eye 1975 had legal troubles himself. And in that case, a lot of those same people condemned Eagle Eye 1975, and I was the one who actually went to his house and investigated things for myself. And I can tell you that he is not a child beater. He is a soccer mom, if anything. His kids are better off than 99% of kids out there. So the reason why people are going to hold to one standard or another a lot of times is, well, do I agree with that person on a lot of things? In this case, you may have hated the guy for his political leanings and not want to help him out in his time of need. And it's not something that I exactly agree with, but I understand. It's a thing, And if you don't agree with me, go ahead and down thumb the video, But I was able to have a friendship with this guy, talking across the aisle, to a guy that I didn't agree with a lot, sometimes. So if you're not one of those people, then you're probably one of the down thumbers. Anyways, on to the actual insightful part of this video. Many of you don't know, but I was a delegate for 2012 and 2014 for the Republican Party in El Paso County. And I was state, congressional, judicial, and county delegate for my precinct. And I was there, creating all sorts of havoc with my votes, and so Jared wants to know my perspective on this article that, link in the description box. This article is about how the Republican Party in Colorado has decided not to take an opinion poll during their caucus. And what that used to be was, when you caucus on caucus night before the county assembly, the judicial assembly, the congressional assembly, and the state assembly, at the caucus you pick the delegates that go to those assemblies. But also, there was a preference poll that was taken, and that happened first. And then you had to wait around and vote for delegates. Well, a lot of people would just show up, vote for whoever it was that they wanted to be president, or the nominee of the Republican Party, and then they would leave. and they wouldn't wait to vote on who the delegates were. Well, the delegates did not have to vote the way that that opinion poll went. That vote wasn't binding. It was just an opinion poll. It didn't have any consequence on what the delegates actually did. And there was a certain campaigner named Ron Paul who was not in the lead in opinion polls, but had very intelligently instructed all of his supporters to go become delegates. Okay? And when they did that, they took over a good portion of the party. Enough that it was scary to the rank-and-file leadership of the Republican Party, such that in the 2012 RNC, the Republican National Convention, they changed the rules to keep Ron Paul from speaking because he had enough states to speak and actually force a vote in order to say, do you really want Mitt Romney, or do you want Ron Paul? And enough of his delegates had shown up that night that had that vote happened, he might have won. But through a lot of dirty, underhanded trickery, the rank-and-file Republican Party leaders changed the RNC rules the night before, and there's many YouTube videos on this, okay? They changed the rules to silence Ron Paul for the unity of the party, right? They also changed the rules such that you needed more states than before. They changed the rules such that a candidate like Ronald Reagan would not have been able to make it to the nomination of the party. If the rules were as they are today back then, Ronald Reagan would never have happened. Okay, that's how afraid they are of a person taking over their party and upstaging them all. The people in control of the party are more ideologues than they were decades ago. And they really want someone who reflects their ideals, not somebody who is just popular at the time. So they're trying to squash the little guy and make sure that the guy who is the heir apparent, state to state to state to state, stays that way. They want their guy, not some person who just gets a few states here and there and then makes it to the national convention and then, has an uprising because all of the delegates were secretly his because they were the ones who put themselves forward in their precinct caucuses and said, yeah, I just want to vote for what's best for the party, and they got elected, and then they got sent on to the national convention at their state assemblies. Well, in order to prevent all of that now, what the Republican Party has done is they have passed a rule for their party saying that if an opinion poll is taken, from now on, the person who wins that state, that all of those delegates have to go with the way that the opinion poll goes. And so it basically makes the role of a delegate pretty much a useless ceremonial bystander. There's no reason to send a delegate on if you're just going to go by popular vote in each state, because all the delegates are bound. Well, as a reaction to that, because there's so many logistical problems that creates, such as what if the person who your state votes for drops out of the race before the RNC? Does your state then have to just, abstain from voting? It's crazy. What if that person stays in the race but did something highly immoral? The whole reason we have delegates in primaries, and the whole reason we have the Electoral College is because sometimes there are wild card reasons that you don't want to go with you know, what the majority opinion was last week. You know, you want to go with the up-to-date information and go, wait, we need to change our vote a little bit, you know. So the response by the Colorado Republican Party was to eliminate the opinion poll. Now, this is going to affect Colorado in that no candidate is going to visit Colorado because the state's going to be pretty much split amongst different candidates. You know, each delegate coming from their different place in the state is going to have a different constituency that they're representing. And so we're not going to have a lot of people stopping in Colorado for stump speeches. It's just not going to be a thing. But we're going to have delegates who will be able to choose, just like they always have been choosing. And we're not going to have this rank-and-file national Republican leadership telling what they want to happen to the state Republican Party, and then just saying, you know, whoever we pick, we want you guys to just rubber stamp, and, you know, just have some tradition and ceremony, but don't actually have any real choice. You know, we're not going to have any of that in Colorado. We're going to have actual delegates sent on with no binding poll to them. And if it comes down to the wire where it's like almost a tie in the end, then Colorado is going to become very important. It's just not going to be an important state in the initial runnings of the primary. Now, the insight that I have to this is this. The reason why we're keeping that is because the birthplace of the Libertarian Party was here in Colorado, and there are still a lot of libertarian, cosmotarian style thinkers here, and they are still trying to take over the Republican Party and turn it into theirs, you know, because they realize that it would be far easier for them to take over the Republican Party as it is dying right now than to popularize their own party, because people are so stuck on donkeys or elephants. So they are still trying to come up with grassroots ways to get a candidate that, you know, is from the people and not from the rank and file Republican ideologues into office. And so part of that whole you have to stay later thing, you don't just show up at your caucus and vote for the opinion poll and then leave because you're not going to be voting for the delegate. And the delegate's more important. Part of that also extends to the state assembly, where there's delegates that were sent by their precincts to the state assembly, right? At the state assembly, you vote for which of the resolutions you want to send on to the national convention. Like, there's 70 or 80 different laws that you would like to see happen. You know, like, do we want to protect wolves? For hunters? Do we want to outlaw marijuana? Is that one of the things we want? That's one of the things that we didn't send on out of the list of 100 things that were likely that, you know, we might want the RNC to stand for, right? So there's this giant ballot, and it also has people that you're going to send on to the national convention. And by knowing other delegates, you can network and figure out who that delegate might vote for in the end. You know, many of them already pledged their vote to a certain person, but some of them were unpledged. And so you would just have to ask them who would they vote for, you know, at that time. Anyways, after all of that voting is done, there's a lot of pomp and circumstance, and it takes like 6 hours, and a lot of people get tired of it, So they go home once the results are read, or like once they've voted, they don't even care to wait to hear the results. They'll go look it up on the website later. But after the results are read at the state assembly for your state, the next thing that happens is the chairman who will be running the next state assembly is voted on. And when that happened in 2012, we all voted for one person. And then when it happened in 2014, we all voted for one person. And the people who were trying to use every different loophole in order to try to take control from those rank and file ideologues figured out that people were not waiting around. So even at the state assembly, delegates who used that trick in the precinct caucuses in order to become a delegate, they just waited, so that everybody else left and they were the only people there. They didn't wait till the end of the state assembly. So, in 2014, Ryan Call was elected. The insight that I'm giving you right here as to what is missing from this article linked in the description box that Jared shared on my Facebook is that Ryan Call was elected by those libertarians, Ron Paul supporters, Ben Johnson supporters. He was elected by them to be the chairman. The whole reason why he's in there is to try to create ways to keep those rank-and-file ideologues from squashing another attempt at taking over the party. Okay? And this little loophole he's found of not having opinion poll at all is to keep the National Party from taking control of the state and squashing any uprisings. Sorry that was a bit long-winded at like 17 and a half minutes, but that's my insight. Should make for some really strange caucusing now that we won't know what the state's opinion of all of these candidates were. We're all just going to show up with our own opinions, and we'll just have to talk to each other.